There are stories that hold profound messages. There are memories frozen in time. In the northern part of Cyclades, there is an uninhabited island with a long and turbulent history. Gyaros holds a grim place in modern Greek history, as it was a land of exile for political prisoners during and after the Civil War, and later during the 7-year dictatorship. At the same time, apart from its dark past, Gyaros today presents a significant ecological interest. Below the sea surface, a breathtaking sight awaits. Impressive coral formations and meadows of Posidonia paint a picture of nature's intricate beauty. On the shores and within the caves of Gyaros, 12% of today's global population of the Mediterranean monk seal finds sanctuary to breed. Arxellence 3 is a new international transdisciplinary architectural ideas competition concerning the preservation of historical memory and the promotion and protection of the special environmental characteristics of Gyaros Island. The global architectural community is invited to submit its proposals for the creation of a hub that will function as a pivotal laboratory for the preservation of historical memory and for the development of biodiversity strategies in the Eastern Mediterranean. Arxellence 3 is a unique competition that seeks a transdisciplinary and holistic approach for Gyaros Island. A compelling journey of inspiration and architectural creation has begun. The journey of Arxellence 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed speakers, welcome to the opening ceremony of the International Interdisciplinary Competition Arxellence 3, the concept and organization of which is undertaken by Alumil Group and the civil non-for-profit organization for culture and public benefit AEGEAS. The competition is conducted under the supervision and co-organization of the Technical Chamber of Greece. My name is Anastasia Filippou. I'm an architect, and on behalf of the organizers, I welcome you today to the presentation of the ongoing competition to discover together the characteristics and the context that inspired its creation. I personally thank Mr. Evangelos Liroudias and Mr. Nikos Alpigidis for the invitation and the honor to be able to present today's event and to be here with you. Arxellence 3 aims to preserve historical memory and to highlight and protect the particular environmental characteristics of the island of Gyaros, and invites the global architecture community to reflect, collect ideas, design and submit proposals with the aim of creating a museum and a modern research center which, as a lighthouse of culture, will contribute to the preservation of historical memory and the development of biodiversity strategies in the Eastern Mediterranean. Arxellence 3 was inspired and is aligned with the European Parliament's call for the development of biodiversity protection methods through the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 report entitled Bringing Nature Back into Our Life, inviting all of us to bring nature back into our lives. Today's meeting is divided in two sections. The first section includes the greetings, the description of the still evolving institution Arxellence, but also a description of the environment of Gyaros and its historical past through experiential experiences. Then, we will be able to develop two important thematic sections. First, the issue related to environment at European and global scale, and in particular, the protection of particular environmental characteristics and areas, the preservation of biodiversity, the utilization of environmental knowledge and technological innovation, and secondly, the Greek issue that poses the question of how sustainability issues are addressed in our country, but also what we can improve in this area. Today, internationally renowned scientists and researchers will submit their opinions, divided into two groups under these two main thematics. I would also like to mention that Arxellence 3 is the third consecutive Arxellence Architectural Ideas competition organized by Alumil Group in the context of ESG, an institution that began in 2018 with international architecture competition Arxellence 1, which concerned the design of a municipal nursery and multimodal hall in the municipality of Dionysos in Agios Stephanos, a project that began to be implemented with the support of Alumil. Then, in 2021, Arxellence 2 on the regeneration of the degraded western coastal front of Thessaloniki aroused interest at institutional level, while it mobilized the planning and actions of regional Central Macedonia and the municipality of Thessaloniki, the scientific community, and the people, the citizens of Thessaloniki. Without further delay, I will now give the floor to Mr. Giorgos Mylonas, Chairman and CEO of Alumil Group, who, via his speech, will open the circle of introductory greetings. Welcome, Mr. Mylonas. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank for the honor to offer your precious time to be with us tonight and participate in this open and frank dialogue that Alumil hosts along with the NGO AEGEAS in order to see how we can create a truly paradigm of sustainability with, of course, a respect to historical memory, in order to establish a holistic proposal inspired by people who know. Architects, engineers, people of the environment are the people of Alumil. These are the ones with whom we collaborate in order to make people's life better. They are the ones who make us believe that the future can become brighter and better. Lately, having working abroad with major architecture offices internationally, and by helping to the establishment of emblematic buildings globally, we have seen neighborhoods in Bombay, areas like Hudson Guards in New York. We have seen other underprivileged areas like in Cairo and many other places to be transformed into unique ecosystems of high quality. And Alumil participates in these projects via its studies and, of course, its products. So I guess it's truly beautiful in terms of the ESG and our personal, let's say, effort to be able to help create new paradigms of urban, Icelandic development and growth, not just as a real estate growth, because this is not our line of business, but as implemented interventions of small scale with specialized solutions. And of course, this is not really just to buildings, but to a whole ecosystem. And this is what the paradigms that we wish to be repeated in other places and other areas in our beloved country, Greece. Beyond any doubt, many of you might ask yourself what Alumil has to do with renovation, what has to do with culture, heritage, underwater heritage, and Gyaros. And of course, some others might think, what is there for Alumil? What is it for Alumil? Well, you need to think about that Alumil is all about its people, people just like you. Mothers, fathers with children, grandfathers like myself, who care and fear about the future of their offsprings, people with dreams, with expectations, with aspirations, with dignity, and especially with respect to the other, respect to history, as it does exist without comments. So this should be a positive contribution, and we're just here to claim things, but we're here to provide assistance to everyone, to offer to the general public. Personally speaking, the love of offering is there, and the fact that we did something for the country that we love, Greece. As simple as that. Thank you. I will now invite Mr. Athanasios Martinos, representing the NGO AEGEAS, Managing Director of Eastern Mediterranean Maritime. Welcome, Mr. Martinos.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I want to commend Alumil, George Milonas, and his team, his associates, Nikos Savelpikidis and Evangelos Liroudias, for selecting Gyaros as a theme of the Arxellence 3. The non-profit making company AEGEAS that I represent will contribute to the cost of organizing this competition, this contest, in view of putting forward this forgotten deserted island in the center of the Aegean, to promote the dramatic history of Gyaros, which has been an exile area since the Roman times. In the recent history of Greece, fellow citizens were exiled there for their political beliefs. They survived under extremely inhumane conditions, not all of them. Some lost their lives and were buried in the small cemetery of the island. The prisons, the monument of Gyaros, a very imposing complex of buildings in the little harbors of the island, will have to be restored before they collapse. Studies on the buildings and the environment on Gyaros have been carried out by the Technical University of Athens under the initiative of the then Minister, Mr. Sifonakis. The object of the studies of this contest is to promote and to protect the natural wild beauty of the island in order for it to be visited by nature lovers. And Gyaros has also an archaeological interest. And from what I know, the various archaeological research are under the program of the Cyclades Ephorate. There is interest about Gyaros by WWF, and partners of WWF have worked on the natural environment of Gyaros for many years. The architects' firms have to consult with those, as well as with the municipality of Syros, where Gyaros belongs. The object of this contest, of this competition, is to arouse the interest of the Greek state, the Greek society at large, and, of course, of Europe. Thank you for your attention. Now the floor will be given to Mr. Nikolaos Tachiaos, Deputy Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation, who represents the government.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is an honor and a great pleasure to be among you tonight, representing the Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and the government, of course. Our Prime Minister responded right from the first moment to the invitation of Giorgos Mylonas to participate in today's excellent event by asking me to be able to address a short welcome to an initiative which has some crucial characteristics, some unique characteristics. Allow me to refer to the ambition of tonight's initiative. You know, we heard a lot about architectural competition ideas. We heard a lot about competition of ideas, but scientific competition ideas is not a simple task. It is a challenge that exceeds ambitions that I heard in previous speeches. It is not something simple, it's not something easy. And of course, if it needs to combine some other ambitious goals, which is, of course, historical memory, along with a sustainable management of the environment. This is a very difficult task, a very difficult challenge, because you need to maintain an equilibrium between these two parts. It is further an important issue because you need to, let's say, digest the historical memory. You need to understand the essence of the historical memory that you want to promote, which is an additional difficult task. Needless to say, my dear friend Giorgos Mylonas, to add to what you said earlier, that you're not simply referring to people with knowledge, you are talking to people with inspiration, because in order to be able to respond to this parameter you added in this particular competition, you need to have inspiration, which of course demands a great knowledge of what you want truly to promote. And to allow me also to add to what our dear Thanasis Martinos mentioned, here we're not gathered to simply present historical memory and simply talk about Gyaros. We are here to underline and reiterate the history of Greece, because Gyaros is a place of martyr. It is a place which not only to simple just a few, but is a consolidation of efforts. It is something that demands a new consensus, and this is something very important. And of course, this is why this competition of ideas should actually try to digest. It is not memory as we saw in the initial video, in other words, a piece of paper where some notes are taken, or a simple, let's say, building, or something you have left in a bottle and you leave it just be dragged away into the oceans. No. Memory and historical memory should be promoted, and it should be interconnected with today and with the future, because what we understand in our own generation is that we have actually put in hold our present without never thinking and seeing about the future. We should target to the future, especially when we talk about the management which demands sustainability in the framework of environment, which of course this must be combined via this competition ideas, this interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary competition of ideas. So it's an ambitious project, a major project. We are really touched with such an initiative by Alumil. Alumil always undertakes such an endeavors. I do know Giorgos Mylonas for many, many years, and I always have to testify that he was one of the people who looked always forward for his corporation, for his business, for his state, for his country. I've been with him in many missions abroad, and never Mylonas left out of focus. He was always focused on what he wanted to achieve, and that is why I'm 100% sure and confident that once again this endeavor will be successful. And finally, at the end of the day, in this country, we have accepted that companies, businesses, can and must be associated with society. They can produce endeavors for the society. They can create a relationship of give and take to people, whether these are potential customers. But in any case, it is a relationship that is beneficial for everyone. So I do believe the only one that I wish to add, and I should add, is that for Alumil and for Giorgos Milonas, personally speaking, I'm truly proud for an additional reason, because Alumil is a company and a person that has preserved at its core of its activities, and the activities of the company, of course, Thessaloniki, the place where we both come from. Good luck to the competition of ideas. Good luck to Alumil, and of course, once again, a huge kudos to the people who have undertaken this initiative, the people who have done all the preliminary work, which is demanded in order to create such an endeavor, and of course, kudos to all of you tonight. So let's hopefully see the excellent, tangible results of this amazing effort. Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Now we will give the floor to Mr. Georgios Stasinos, President of the Technical Chamber of Greece. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, dear organizers. We are also an agency that supports this effort throughout these years, and with great attention now, great caution, because it is a particular area, a very sensitive area for many people, and this is how it should be treated. But this is how we deal with it as Technical Chamber of Greece, and this is how the organizers see it. I think that in our country, sensitive issues should be treated in a way, should be managed in a way so as to go forward. I would say that the decision of the organizers to select this place is very important, and the effort is very important as well. No one in this country has been a loser when there was a debate, a dialogue, even more so when there was scientific dialogue, and even more so when there is an effort to produce scientific work which will give options to the state, to the government, and to other agencies to see what they can do, especially in areas where no one has undertaken any initiative during the last 20 years to do anything. I would say then that we are all very sensitive, but we all want to go forward. This decision is very important. We will support, as we have done so, this initiative. We will produce scientific work. We will assist the engineers, our colleague engineers, to do the work, to bring proposals on the table. And at the end, altogether, we will co-shape a proposal in order to take this forward and not remain stagnant. That was all from me. Again, congratulations for this effort. We go all together, hand in hand, and we will go on together, keeping always our sensitivities, whether we are citizens, agencies, parties, or whatever. Thank you very much. Now I will call to the podium Mr. Nikos Salpigidis, Innovation Manager of Alumil Group and responsible for the Arxellence institution. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to the beginning of the third Arxellence competition by Alumil Group. Very briefly, I will mention three things. First of all, what is the Arxellence institution and what we try to achieve, why we have embarked upon this procedure, and finally, what is the work done so far and what are the next steps. So, what is Arxellence? Well, for Alumil Group, it is one of the main pillars of corporate social responsibility. It is a platform of communication that we have created to raise issues for debate in the construction sector, where we live and we are active with our main partners, the architects. Now, why we have embarked upon this? We are an organization that has the pleasure to undertake projects in various scales all over the world, small, medium, very big or very big. And many out of those, every year, give us the possibility, the opportunities to examine new products, new solutions. They make us innovate, and they take us by the hand to create something new. To give you some examples, to be more concrete, this is a building project, a construction project in Romania, in an environment that is quite difficult, quite harsh. It is a floating house. This is a listed building in New York. It's the the headquarters of Google. Alumil was asked the question whether it can build these windows, which are much below what we call a passive building, that is much more efficient. And finally, a more complex project. This is an helicoid skyscraper in Vancouver House, where we had to innovate to create high-quality products for thermal insulation, etc., etc. So you see that there are projects that create innovation and take us one step further down the road as a company. And this has been giving us a lot of force, has pushed us forward in Greece. And there is always a question raised. Why? Why can't we see projects that take us a step further down the road in Greece? This is a question that we wanted to bring on the table. This is why we established Arxellence. Arxellence, practically, is a platform for discussion and debate where we try to answer questions that we want to highlight. So we started the whole institution in 2016 with Arxellence 1. Arxellence 1 was an architecture competition for ideas, and the theme was put to the Greek community of architects, a brief where we wanted to have answers for a public building, a public nursery school with a hall for various uses in the municipality of Dionysos. We wanted to see there what were the forces, what was needed in order for us to have international architectural competitions. And the main question was whether we create dialogue and if we can ask questions where we will receive creative answers and finally be able to offer, because this is part of the corporate social responsibility of Alumil, to create solutions and not to raise problems or mention problems that we see around us. The response was very positive, and quite fast we went on to Arxellence 2. Arxellence 2 enlarged a bit the scope of the competition. We're talking about an international competition which took place under the coordination of Julia and under the rules of architecture by UNESCO. It was bigger. It pertained to the central business district of Thessaloniki, and the whole question and proposal had to do with the design of 12 hectares, 120 strema, based on sustainable building. 3 questions were put concretely. The one was a dual question. How an area of 12 hectares within the urban fabric of a city can deal, and how can we create a building program that belongs to many owners? Do you follow the Greek legislation and you fill it with buildings, or do you find another way to create high buildings and leave also open space for the other citizens of the city? And third question, what do you do with the listed buildings? In this project, in this area, there were 7 listed buildings. The answers we got were varied, 170 proposals by 93 countries. This, of course, had a big impact on the way that the solutions were presented. Different cultures, different legal frameworks that approach a specific problem, if I may put it that way, or theme. I will show you the second award. The reason I'm showing it is because it was designed by Greeks who live in the US and work in the US, and it is an answer to the issue that there is no will to create more creative projects in Greece. So we got these proposals, and the next step was to do something different. Here, this proposal is the proposal that was voted by the inhabitants of Thessaloniki in an exhibition that we did. We put all the proposals, all the answers, that is, for 2 weeks, and the people could vote for them, because the most important thing is to understand and to see that what we design is acceptable by the people who will use it every day and who will be living in it and seeing it. One step further that we took was to see the converging views. I told you we had 170 proposals by various cultures, but there were some converging views, and we gathered those, and we had a round table organized where we discussed the distance between these converging proposals with the Greek reality, the distance between them. How far away are they? And what should we see differently in order to implement such projects? So this is Arxellence 2, how we approach with an area in an urban fabric in a sustainable way. And we come to Arxellence 3. Arxellence 3, as understood, pertains to an island, Gyaros, where we understand right away that the influence area grows. We're not talking about a city. We have water, we have energy, we have light, things that we have to take into account, many more things. Now, the most difficult issue is why Gyaros? We all understand that Gyaros is an island that is a black page in Greek history. It is an island of pain, of exile, of death. It has the memory is very bleak. At the same time, it is an island that is very protected, and it has a great sea underwater wealth. So what we do with Arxellence 3, Arxellence 3, I repeat, is an open interdisciplinary competition of ideas, and we want to bring to light the historical memory of this island, and at the same time respect, which is imposed by the island, to be linked with the other islands of the country. How can we imagine Greece's future, Greece's tomorrow, and think how the islands of tomorrow should be, while respecting the environment and the Greeks who will be living in Greece in the coming years? So this is practically our Arxellence 3, and you will hear very interesting debates in the coming, in the next panels. Thank you very much.
Ο λόγος τώρα στον κύριο Ιωάννη Χατζηγεωργίου, πρίτανη του Εθνικού.
The floor now to Mr. Ioannis Hadjigeorgiou, Dean of the National Technical University of Athens and professor in the Naval Architecture School.
Dear organizers, dear former President of the Republic, Mr. Minister, Mr. Milonas, Mr. Martinos, dear invitees, first of all, I wish to thank you for the honor on behalf of the organizers for my presence tonight. Capitalizing on Mr. Milonas' speech, on his initial question, why Alumil is into issues of sustainability, historical memory, preservation of landscape and nature, protection of historical site. Well, of course, the answer is, ESG. And, of course, this is also related to AEGEAS NGO. It has to do with their social responsibility. I believe one of the most important humane features and aspects is social offering. So I do represent a higher education institution, the most prestigious one, I humbly want to say, the National Technical University of Athens, where the academic responsibility and consciousness is embedded in its DNA. Tomorrow, actually, allow me to add, the interdisciplinary committee of the National Technical University of Athens will present its proposal for the safeguard and the protection of the destruction of Zakynthos. So this is a huge effort for us. And of course, we exist for the society as higher education institution, and we do exist and we do belong to Greeks. Now, out of which we always want to offer at a benevolent level our know-how, our expertise, pro bono, of course, if of course this is asked, to this major endeavor and project which is undertaken under the auspice of Alumil and AEGEAS NGO. It is so important, this particular project, because it involves not just issues of preservation of nature, because Gyaros is a Natura area, but also it has to do with historical memory. Issues of historical memory that, even more importantly, are interrelated and interconnected to history and, of course, to, let's say, the consensus of all that we'll need. So I wish to thank the organizers, and especially as a representative of the National Technical University of Athens. I am a volunteer in case you need our own support as higher education institution. Thank you. Now I will call Ms. Sofia Papaioannou, journalist and founder of Historima.org, who will present a short video about Gyaros on the occasion of Arxellence 3. Good evening. As a journalist, I first visited Gyaros 8 years ago, and I'm referring to the number of 8, the 8 years, because this provides the opportunity to myself and my team to be able to meet people that unfortunately today are dead or unfortunately can contribute to this dialogue. And they cannot, let's say, inspire this competition of ideas. When we took a small boat from Syros to Gyaros, a distance of around 1 hour, the weather was really bad. And we had to protect also the devices that we carried together. And where we were approaching the island of Gyaros, and we had to open the tent of the small boat, I need to confine in you what one feels when he or she sees this building is the only word I can describe, and it's a word that I heard from all the people that we were in contact with, is it is a huge building made of bricks at the end of this island, and awe becomes even greater if one imagines that it is a building that was built by the prisoners themselves during the first period that they were there, during the Civil War, the most, let's say, difficult part of this history in Gyaros. And of course, it is a building that bears the weight of and the burden of all this, let's say, emotional memory. And when you enter this building, you will see it through the video. And as of course you will work on this competition, it is a building that is in ruins, and we enter there rather worried not to harm ourselves. And we enter the building, and you see the word that says censorship. We also saw the different halls of the building, the hall of isolation. We also saw some crosses, and of course the first cemetery, the first exiles. And of course, it is one of the buildings that you, as architects, can feel it better than us, who, let's say, start talking to you, describing what's happening. And when I saw this building, I thought that we were in a rather calm day where we wanted to, let's say, try to film things. And I started to think about all these exiles, all these people who were imprisoned there, who arrived, of course, after many tortures, people who suffered, people who were sick. I'm not want to provoke any more fatigue, let's say, but I want to say some things out of the interviews and the people we met 8 years ago, things that hopefully will help you also to get additional inspiration. I guess you know that that was the first period of Gyaros during the Civil War, where the exiles left were there, when during that moment, the island was called Thessaloniki, Island of Death. There were tortures, there was the notorious fig tree, and if you enter the historima.org website, you can listen to many different stories of people who talked about this first period of Gyaros. Some people died during this first period of exile, and that is why you can find the old cemetery. And during this period, people who lived there, for a certain period, the prison was closed. Then, during the military junta, during the first days, the junta decided once again to send exiles over there, in a building that was destroyed, that was in ruins, that was already in crumble. So I guess that the first exiles who built Gyaros, with, of course, all this torture, used to live in tents. Now, the second people who arrived there were also women. And I want you to remember this minor note. Women arrived in Gyaros, exiles who left their children behind. People told me that at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 a.m., there was a loudspeaker who would scream the name of women who were mothers and who could leave the island, and how important it was for these women to listen to the name in order to return to their children. Gyaros was closed in 1974 after the fall of the military junta. For many years, it was once again left in ruins. It was then used by the Hellenic Navy. And something that we didn't know, that is before 1947, for the exiles, there were 4 or 5 families who used to live as agriculturists, as farmers on the island. They used to produce wheat, and they could send it to Syros. So it was a very touching interview, actually, that we had with one of these people, who in tears told us that this is my homeland. Gyaros is my homeland, and that he would like to return to Gyaros, and now, or back then, he used to live in Syros. And the other story we heard through our reports was about the CB radio stories in 1941. On Gyaros, there was the first CB radio who would actually inform the alliances that Germans would arrive, and we met through our reports people who used to say in our interviews that Gyaros was a place where they would transfer and transport many officers of the military and the Navy to the Middle East with the families, the women, who would manufacture some kind of mattresses out of the wheat in order to be able to sleep. There was a CB radio of 1941, and after that, not one in 1942. So there was another minor, let's say, unknown history of the island, leaving aside the major history of exile and imprisonment. So what is also important is, leaving aside the great historical, emotional value and memory of this place, because this island is also related to its landscape and nature, Gyaros, this island in the middle of the Aegean Sea, due to its historicity, due to the fact that it was left behind, it has an amazing depth and a biodiversity of huge value. WWF in 2013, they undertook an initiative and they created an environmental park. There are studies about the corals, about the Posidonia, all of these things that you shall be able to discover, about also the monk seal, Monachus monachus. And there are studies that show that 15% of the global population of the monk seal, Monachus monachus, is in Gyaros. And I guess that in an era when we talk about over-tourism, overfishing, all of a sudden, at the center of the Aegean Sea, we do have an island with an amazing history and an island that is still virgin. So to conclude, before showing the video, allow me to say that in this interview, in these reports, there is something that is going to be touching for many women, many mothers, and many people that, you know, each interview for me has a certain footprint. I do know that the people who have suffered, suffered during the Gyaros, but I'm going to refer to a woman that I was really touched upon the story. It's Eleftheria Aliti, who was imprisoned in Gyaros during the junta, as well as her husband, who was an MP of Edda in the island of Mytilene. So all of a sudden, a couple, suddenly, abruptly, they had to leave their 2-year-old child behind to a grandmother, to the grandmother who was in black. And this lady was one of those who would wait to hear her name to go back to the island of Mytilene. And I was really touched to hear that, first of all, what she said, that when I would lie to the bed, I would sleep because I always used to dream about my child. I never heard my name. She stayed 18 months in Gyaros, and when she returned back, her child could not recognize her, and she could not hug her child. She used to cry for many hours. The child she would call his grandmother as his mother. So all of a sudden, when I asked her, you know, it was an interview about Gyaros, but she talked a lot about her child. So there was a huge trauma on that lady, and did her child have forgive her? So she said, our child did forgive us, but I don't know what happened in his soul. So that's how I'd like to wrap up my presentation. So this is a unique opportunity to be able to promote this island. I'm glad that architects from all over the world, and of course architects from Greece, will be able to learn about Gyaros and its history, and I sincerely hope that the ideas that will be submitted and the proposals that will be submitted will have a respect to the historicity, the historical memory, and of course to the virgin character of this island. So please see and watch a minor abstract of the video that we have created in historima.org. Just a minor abstract which shows what Gyaros was for some people who live there as exiles. Thank you. Άστο το διαβάσω και αυτό δεν βγάλει πόδι. We went to Gyaros, and it was a sweet sight, a very sweet sight. It was afternoon in April. Gyaros was green, and when the hatch doors opened, we saw the various levels. And in the center, between the two coves, where we saw the stairs, let's say, the center was a building built of brick, As soon as we got there, the prisons were already occupied by the first to have arrived, and then we went to the cove. There was the first cove, the second cove, the third cove, and then the cove. They gave us a tent per 4 people. We set it up ourselves on old traces left by the previous exiles. We were the first to enter. Men entered in separate wings, women in other wings. And when we say wing, we mean a courtyard where 2 or 3 dormitories would get their recreation or yacht time. That's Gyaros. It is dirty, it is uninhabitable, the windows are broken. The dormitories are not whitewashed, it is brick. They gave us a tomato, a can of some kind of spam, and bread. I saved the tomato to eat it in the morning, and when I got up, the mice had eaten it. We had no way to wash. There was no water. There was no soap. If there's no water, what use is it to have a soap? The deprivation freedom can open other paths in the free conscience, so it is not lost. And I am one of the lucky people who did not experience physical torture. I experienced psychological torture, which I overcame. My time in exile gave me the right to defend my opinion without fear of betraying something. I betray nothing. I am consistent with what I want, and what I want is social justice and democracy. Gyaros is a landmark of the people's struggle. It is a place that must be preserved at all costs. It was built by the prisoners under whip and scourge by the leftists of the era. We cannot let it vanish. I believe it is a monument, not a monument of beauty per se, but a historical monument. Because not only us, but also the previous generation went through so much that the state should have taken care of its own. You shouldn't have to claim these things. They should preserve them to the extent they can. There's no other way. A person either enters the process of struggle, not only for survival, but for progress, or they will be lost. There is no other way. There is no life without struggle. The struggle is inherent to human nature, the struggle for a better life. And when I say better life, I do not mean a prosperous life, no way. Better life means a most just life, a more peaceful life, with less evil and more good. That is a just life.
Στο σημείο αυτό.
At this point, I would like to call to the podium Mr. Prokopis Pavlopoulos, who will deliver the keynote speech, The European Union Facing the Climate Crisis. Minister, dear friends, George Thanasis, and so many others, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to submit, to contribute something small in this effort, and I want to congratulate Alumil AEGEAS, the Non-Profit Civil Company AEGEAS, all those who, during these difficult times, where sensitivities are beginning to vanish, all those insist on maintaining these sensitivities alive, to take them to the future generations, to maintain them alive through the maintenance of historical memory. I saw the documentary of Mrs. Papaioannou, the respect to historical memory in that island of Gyaros. And coming here, I saw the people waiting because they were not informed. And who were worried about the interruption of this memory. And I confirmed and I assured them that there is no such intention. Some of the people who spoke in this documentary were outside. And I asked Mr. Stasinos, since he is the youngest, to meet them and to explain to them that in this struggle, in this cause, we are all together. And no one has the intention to downgrade the voice of history. History as it is objectively recorded through the struggles for democracy and freedom of a people who has gone through a lot to get to the present day level. I think this effort should be, the effort on Gyaros, this competition should be incorporated in a broader effort which has to do with the way that we Greeks, as the successors of Greek civilization and as European citizens, have to respect history while respecting the environment. And this is why when my friend Yannis Liroudias asked me to participate, and since you are much more competent about what we saw, I asked for remaining in something and send an SOS together with you about what is happening today, the huge problem of the climate crisis, to see this project not just as memory, but also as a springboard to be able to defend this land with this history and the whole planet, and show that we Greeks, against the current, we remain sensitive to history, sensitive to freedom and to democracy, and sensitive towards an environment that must be in a way so as to let people create as free beings, free thinking beings. Ladies and gentlemen, it is strange. We have gone through a time, the European elections all over Europe, and we heard nothing about Europe's policy on the issue of the climate crisis. I don't expect other countries such as the US, for instance, to do that. You saw part of the dialogue, the debate yesterday between Trump and Biden. I do not expect a lot from them. Unfortunately, the US, during Trump's administration, proved that they do not respect what they sign. And I don't expect from big powers, BRICS or others, because they are mainly thinking about their economic profit and interest, and not our coexistence in this blessed planet, and yet cursed planet. So we are here to declare, all of us together, and shout that Europe has to play this role and defend the environment. François Mitterrand had said that if I were Prime Minister of Greece, all policies would go through the prism of culture and civilization. So I call upon you and all European citizens to say that all the policies have to go through the need to face the climate crisis and to restore the ecological balance. We have exceeded 0.0. When the greenhouse phenomenon was discovered, and when Paul Gruchen talked about the Anthropocene period of the climate crisis, not the climate change, the climate crisis, the international community saw that in 1969 with UNESCO, then in 72 with in Stockholm and the Club of Rome, then in Rio with the Intergovernmental Summit for the climate change, where the first efforts started, especially in 1992 with the Rio Agreement. The Rio Agreement was revised several times, but unfortunately it was not implemented, again under the responsibility of those who are mainly responsible for the CO2 emissions that lead to the climate crisis. And we reached 2016, which I witnessed in the Paris Agreement. That was the end of it, where specific obligations were undertaken by everyone globally. Ladies and gentlemen, the US did not have the time to sign this agreement during Obama's tenure. He went to Paris, Barack Obama, he went. But Trump, when he took office, he announced, the first thing he did was to announce the departure of the US from the Paris Agreement. And Biden, when he became president, he brought back the US. So you understand the going back and forth. So international law, where is it? You see it in the international law on of the sea and elsewhere, that the international law is collapsing. We see it in the international law on environment. What are the provisions that are implemented? We don't have the necessary mechanisms. The states, the most powerful ones, the ones which are responsible for the climate crisis, they are violating the various agreements. A small comfort was seen a few months ago on the 9th of April when the European Court on Human Rights in Strasbourg, which is the guarantor for this treaty, imposed to an iconic country, Switzerland, which was not complying with the Paris Agreement, it imposed to Switzerland Verein Senior. It's a union of ladies which considered that a country should be condemned, and Switzerland was condemned for the violation of this. That was the first time. It was a small step, a very small step, but it is telling. And what about our Europe? Europe has the greatest share of responsibility. Europe has a culture, a civilization based on ancient Greece, ancient Rome, Athens, Rome, Jerusalem, Greece of freedom and democracy, Rome of law, and Jerusalem, the third pillar, the religion. It is a culture, a civilization of humanism, of justice, which is compelled to support the planet so that people can live and create in this environment. Europe, as a legal entity, was part of the Paris Agreement and has done and is doing efforts with the Green Deal, which put as a limit to reach climate neutrality by 2050, which means that all the greenhouse emissions can be absorbed without any interventions, that can be absorbed by the land, the oceans, and the forests. This is why it was decided in 2019 to reduce the emissions at 45% in order to avoid the increase over 1.5%. This was not enough, and we went to 55%. But we are still lagging behind, ladies and gentlemen. Last June in 2023, that is throughout the year, and this June in 2024 has shown that what we had put as a limit for 2030, we have already exceeded it. June 2023 was the hottest year, and June was the hottest June ever experienced, ever recorded in the history of humanity. Yes, Europe is doing its effort, but it is alone, and not with all the countries participating equally. Yet, the effort of Europe is failing because we are not alone on this planet. No matter how many obligations we fulfill, we Europeans, we cannot face a phenomenon of that size when other countries with much higher contribution, all these countries do not do their duty, no matter what Europe does. When the US, Russia, China, and other big powers, industrial countries, violate consistently the rules, what can we do? I'm saying this in order to conclude and not tie you out. It is not enough for Europe to have its own laws and implement them intramuros and then for us to feel satisfied. This is the big opportunity for Europe to do what it has to do since its inception, to shape a planetary policy. I have said it repeatedly. Europe does not have a role to play for its peoples. It has a planetary role to play for basic principles and values of democracy and humanism, which other powers cannot and do not want to do it, although they are powerful economically. Europe has to understand that it is not a regional power, secondary and passive. Europe has to understand that it is a big power, a power of civilization, a power of history, a power of democracy. In order to do that, however, Europe must have the necessary entities and people and persons, individuals, the prestige that is needed, the people who are not ready for compromises, but for main steps to be undertaken. If Europe remains in this passive role of a regional power that is dragged along, as we have seen in many decisions lately, then the history of Europe will be short and it will go backwards. I have seen this effort that you are doing, and in which I participate with all my forces, as an effort pertaining to a historical land, Gyaros. But actually it is an effort that is a pilot one. It is an effort which shows the path as to what we have to do, how we have to proceed to defend a planet and a climate that, if it goes along this backward course, then the planet cannot host man. Man, not as an entity, but man as a personality, as a value that does not exist only to breathe and live, but to create. This path of creation goes through such efforts, and we have all to rally with it, and they need to be multiplied. And I wish there will be others to imitate this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Καλώ τώρα τους συμμετέχοντες στο πρώτο.
I would kindly invite the participants of the first panel, where we shall discuss issues related to the European experience. Dr. Panagiotis Balabanis, Senior of the Research and Innovation of the European Commission, Dr. Elena Lopez Gani, President of ICAPLIS Royal Alkanoid Institute and expert in issues of green and blue economy, Mr. Sanjay Puri, a distinguished architect with great work in all areas of architecture in India and internationally. The panel will be moderated by Dr. Maria Papadopoulou, professor at the National Technical University of Athens and president of the Board of Directors of Natural Environment and Climate Change Agency. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to thank the organizers, of course, personally, for this excellent effort, and of course, all of you who came here tonight to start together this amazing initiative that will truly help the natural environment and, of course, the historic memory. My name is Maria Papadopoulou. I wear, let's say, two hats in this panel discussion. I'm a professor of the National Technical University of Athens and responsible of natural environment and climate change, and of course head of OFIPECA, this particular agency, an agency that of course is responsible for all the protected areas, the so-called Natura areas, and one of which is of course Gyaros. In this framework, I'm truly happy that we see many things, the ones that have been discussed, and actually provide the framework under which the challenges we face today as society, and not just nationally, let's say, but globally, do affect our resources, our natural resources, and of course, this is what we should try and see at the level of creation, inspiration, but also in terms of sustainability for the next generation. So in other words, we need a coordinated effort for the natural environment and the resources we have to be able to continue to exist for next generations. So climate change, urbanization, the growth of population, and of course our lifestyle are one of the drivers, as we say in the scientific jargon, through which we try to face challenges. The challenges that emanate and are related to management of natural resources, and especially in this region, the region of Greece. We talk about water, we talk about energy, we talk about ecosystems, and of course we talk also about food. So all of the above should be seen via a holistic approach, because the lack of resources and the competitive views that do exist sometimes create challenges and problems. And of course, problems can only be faced temporarily with some solutions, but this is a repository and the heritage that we should leave for next generations. So we, as scientists, as the rector of the National Technical University of Athens said in his introductory speech, we should help the state and provide solutions and focus on sustainable and equal access to these resources. Trying to finalize this introductory comment, I wish to say that a rational management has to have two main aspects. And I guess the most crucial is the one related to the interconnection and how decisions taken by politicians are related, or should be related to resources, but it has to do with the cohesion of policies in order, in between different policies, to find synergies and try to overcome disagreements. But all of the above can only take place through the contribution, through the participation of citizens and the civil society. So needless to say, science and also politics and society are very important in order to be able to have a holistic system of sustainability for the planet, for our country, for next generations. So under this framework, I'm kindly to invite Panagiotis Balabanis, active senior of the Director General for Research Innovation, to explain and talk and express his views about this international architectural ideas competition and how such initiatives can contribute towards a viable future for these regions and especially for citizens. Thank you very much, Ms. Papadopoulou. I also wish, of course, to thank the organizers of this architectural ideas competition. And I would like to share with you some ideas and present also some actions on behalf of the European Commission. And I wish to underline some topics that are important for the potential competitors, participants, to know and understand. I will continue, as the former President of the Republic said, that we are at a crucial moment and momentum of history where we face some major challenges. And these challenges are not simply related to climate change, but they're also related to biodiversity, to water and water management, and of course crises related to food scarcity. So allow me to refer to two examples that we all know. Utilizing resources is around 50% of the CO2 emissions and represent more than 90% of the loss of biodiversity and loss of fresh water. So we do know that water resources are under pressure due to climate change and also due to the non-rational use of waters. I would also like to mention, as you know, that recently the intergovernmental platform of science and policy for biodiversity of ecosystems, the so-called RBBS, in the report of the Global Evaluation of 2019, there's a reference that the sixth manifestation of human life losses, of biodiversity loss is expressed due to human activity. Another paradigm is related to our oceans. Our oceans will have 1 billion plastics for 3 tons of fish by 2025. And 2050 onwards, we expect to have more plastics in the ocean than fish. So for climate, I guess that former President Pavlopoulos made such reference, and we already know the consequences on climate from this phenomena. Last year, Spain, Portugal, Greece had huge heat waves, and they suffered from wildfires. And of course, many parts of the Middle East, they saw temperatures more than 50 degrees Celsius. What scientists had predicted and had warned us about many years ago, that what we're living is not an exception, but it's going to be a new rule, we live it already today. But as Ms. Papadopoulou said, this climate crisis, this biodiversity crisis is interconnected. And this is related to the fact that food, energy, and climate are interconnected with this system, the nexus, the UEFA nexus, that has many complexities and feedback. So the pressure exercising part of this nexus might create severe consequences on others. So this also further corroborates that today's systems and the way we operate are unsustainable. Our societies urgently need a major transformation with major changes, not just in terms of technologies, but also at the level of economy, society, and policies. So today's political situation makes these priorities even more pressing. As you know, during this new commission that's going to be updated in a few months, so the new Green Deal promoted the new access priority for a climate-neutral Europe by 2050 and a more sustainable nature and future. So it created an important list of measures and a roadmap that actually prescribes the new future of the European Commission, the vision of the European Commission for the transformation that must take place in order to arrive to a new green Europe. But as I said, this transition towards a new, efficient, prosperous economy. So I guess that this has to do the new level, the new part of the economy. So moreover, we need a more systemic way of thinking, systemic approach, and interdisciplinary approach. In order to face these interconnected challenges. And as Ms. Papadopoulou said, this green transition demands an important support on behalf of people. The active participation of people is a major tool in order to be able to achieve these objectives set by the new Green Deal of the European Commission. Moreover, research and innovation are important for the support of the European Green Deal. The Horizon program is the current program of the EU for research and innovation. It actually provides a great emphasis, not just for the production of knowledge, but also in actions that can actually exhibit how we can have some models, new models, that can help us apply the Green Deal. Another important aspect and topic that is supported by the European Commission, the Horizon program, it actually promotes the funding of benefits related to the so-called net-to-day solutions. That is very important for the restoration of the environment. Moreover, the Horizon 2020 program introduced some new models for research that focus on resolving social challenges and also further help the reconnection of the people with the European Commission and the research programs. And of course, these missions of the European Commission, the so-called EU missions, aim at inspiring people and provide a better future to green transition. So one of these 5 European missions also focus on the restoration of oceans and waters by 2030. And in the framework of this commission, we expect new synergies to identify innovative solutions between islands that face in Europe similar challenges and will be financed accordingly by the EU. I wish to conclude by adding the following. The restoration and preservation of the environment in the framework of the European Green Deal should also examine our cultural heritage should take into consideration other words. You know, our cultural heritage, ladies and gentlemen, was missing from the main discussion and debate about sustainable development. But the 2030 agenda of the United Nations has acknowledged the importance of cultural heritage for sustainable growth. And of course, the initiative for the new European Bauhaus interconnects the European Green Deal with our cultural heritage, with our active daily life. So we ask from all stakeholders and all Europeans to imagine and build a new sustainable future, which is going to be beautiful for our hearts, our souls, and our people. I fully believe that this will actually also inspire the people who shall participate in this open architectural ideas competition. Thank you, dear Panagiotis.
I think this last point regarding how sustainability of the resources and nature and how the contact with nature and connection to cultural heritage is the core of this competition. Now I will give the floor to dear Elena Lopez. Please, you have the floor for a short message.
Yeah, I think I feel quite, it's quite special to be here, because I think your community. I'm not an architect. I'm a geographer. I have a completely different discipline. But I think that the challenges that we're facing are so complex that we really need to put all hands on deck. And that's why I like the title that the organizers gave me of Building the Societies of Tomorrow. But I think one thing that we have in Europe that we have to value, is the fact that we have this history and that we can learn from it. And I think that's why this project, I think it's an opportunity for different communities, in this case, the architectural community, the engineering community, maybe anthropologists, biologists. They will need to work with many, many people to really come up with very clever ideas, because I think that the challenge that they've given you in the competition is very, very high. So let's see. Okay. So this actually links very nicely with what was said before. We're going through a period of what I call a polycrisis, where we have a crisis on the one hand on climate change. I think I don't have to say, we all live in the Mediterranean. We're experiencing the heat waves. Last year, you had very dramatic events happening in Greece with fires and floods in the Thessaloniki region, medicanes that we've never seen before. At the same time, the biodiversity crisis is also happening. When biodiversity, actually, we know from the reports of the IPCC, is probably the best and safest option to keep within 1.5. So, and at the same time, and I think that's why I put this square here, this actually comes from the fact that we also have to value our cultural heritage. People are the ones that, in a way, created the crisis. The planet probably would be fine without us. So therefore, it needs us to fix the problem. And in relation to, at the moment, for example, only 3 weeks ago, there was a meeting in Bonn in preparation for the next COP, which is going to be in Baku. And one of the key things that is going to be discussed is the Loss and Damage Fund. And one thing that is very interesting, as architects, you should know that in the losses and damages discussion, one of the key issues is cultural heritage. Why am I saying this? Because I think what they've given you is an amazing opportunity to pick, a very difficult case that has a really complex history. And I think, the selection of the site, I think, was very brave, because I think it will really ask you as architects to think out of the box, how we can deal with these complex challenges, where we have to acknowledge our history and what happened, and build, with hope for the future. Now, I've just come back from Valencia, which is at the moment green capital in Europe, of the Resilient Cities Forum, where, for example, 100 cities are really working hard under the mission of cities to become carbon neutral by 2030, which is actually before the EU target. And I think that all the knowledge that, all these test sites, where we put all these complex challenges in one site, they really need your imagination. They need you to think out of the box and really come up with ideas that then other people can take and implement. It also links, I think this is a great site because it also links to the mission and adaptation. If you think about it, we're talking about an island with sea level rise, with basically, in a Mediterranean is one of the hotspots in the world in relation to climate change. So whatever you can come up with could probably be of value to other places in the world. Think about the fact that, we also, with this new commission that is coming, we need to think that, and I come from the climate change space and probably from the green space, we're not winning, in a way, people's hearts. I definitely can give you many arguments and much evidence from the IPCC why we need to act. The numbers are super clear in terms of the biodiversity loss, but somehow, we're not communicating. And that's why I think, and this is what, one of my last slides, I think we need to change mindsets. And also, we need to engage with emotions. I mean, we've seen, what's happening. I think the new commission, as Alaban was saying, is going to, be in place soon. And the wind is changing. It's now really this understanding that we have to think about competitiveness, but we also have to think about human well-being. And that's why I brought you this quote. Because if you actually, it's one of the quotes, my favorite quotes, is be the change you want to see in the world, because it links with climate change, but also with change, the fact that you can change it, because we created it. And therefore, it empowers you to make that change. But when you actually read the original quote is really talking about changing ourselves so that then we can change things, yeah? So I think, in a way, I kind of leave you with that thought that, in a way, I'm pleading to you as architects or engineers or whatever discipline you come from, that we need, I think what you bring, because to me, I associate you more with the arts, I think you bring inspiration. You bring creativity. You bring thinking out of the box. And I think the island that they've given you as a competition is going to really challenge you. But I also think, and I'm positive, that we will see really, hopefully great examples coming forward, that then, we can also demonstrate that this green economy is actually all about restoration of, history, building on our knowledge, valuing biodiversity, and preparing for the impacts of climate change, looking at it as an opportunity to change a model that is broken, because otherwise we wouldn't have these problems. Social issues, environmental issues, the economic model. So I just wish you luck with the competition, and I really look forward eventually to seeing the projects that you bring forward.
Thank you very much, Elena. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
I think that the thought that we need to think out of the box is indeed very, very important, and this will really improve the future of all of us. Last but not least, of course, Sanjay Puri. Please, the floor is yours.
Commendable effort by Alumil to put together competitions like this, will not just bring the whole architecture community together, but brings them to interact with professionals from other fields and have interesting collaborations to create coherent solutions for projects like this. It's like giving meaning to an old building and restoring and reusing what is there in the past. But most importantly, it is a correct step in reducing the carbon footprint, and at the same time, making the environment more sustainable. If every company was to do one project like this, the world would be a better place to live in. And Elena and I were just discussing how there are these glass towers being built in tropical climates and desert climates like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Jaipur. So these are some contextual responses which are based on the climate of the place and on the social culture there and the fabric of the architecture that used to exist. This is a project of 100 acres with a low-rise housing development, which is spread out, planned like an organic city. So it literally spreads out into the landscape spaces. Every single house overlooks a garden, and they all have sheltered spaces. The corridors are all naturally ventilated, and all the spaces move out from the inside to the outside in sheltered outdoor spaces, which respond to the climate of this region in Rajasthan, where the temperatures are in excess of 35 degrees for over 8 months of the year. This is another project, the school, which is built as part of the same township, where again you see this very interesting pergola space that connects the primary school to the secondary school. There are large screen walls which totally reduce the heat gain from the east, west, and the south. And the entire building has this interesting open space which is sheltered throughout the day. And children can play here even at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the temperature outside is 40 degrees Celsius. This is another project that we did in the eastern part of India, where for a lot of time, people who used to live in the city used to live in small houses. And then land prices became too high and they couldn't afford to buy another house. So they were forced to move to apartment buildings. And apartment buildings were made like boxes where people didn't have open spaces. So we came up with this solution where every single room of every single apartment opens into 24 feet high terraces, so that even while you're in a building, you are opening out towards the outside. So in a sense, it is like having a villa in the sky. Even though these are very small apartments, they're 3-bedroom apartments, but every room opens out into these shelter spaces. And this building then proved to be one of the most successful in the city. In a city where buildings were unoccupied, this was one of the first apartment buildings that was fully occupied. That's a house that we built in Lucknow, a city in the center of India, where again, the temperatures are very high for 8 months of the year. So there are GFRC screens which screen the entire building from all sides. So it's on an arterial road. So the noise is reduced as well as the heat gain is reduced. So as a result of this, you can walk into this house when the temperature is really high outside, but it is absolutely cool inside without the use of air conditioners or any electrical gadget. That's a hotel we did in Nasik, which is a city close to Mumbai in India, where 50% of the walls are built in the local stone that's available in the region, and 46% of the area of this hotel is naturally ventilated and not air conditioned. It's a very sustainable hotel design, and it is based on a 16-meter contour difference within the site without cutting or filling any portion of the site. So each room opens out into large balconies which overlook a beautiful lake in the front and hills at the back. That's a house we recently completed a few months ago, which is very traditional, but it's traditional because if you know anything about Rajasthan, it's the heritage capital of the country, of India. And that's a region where people, earlier times, 100 years ago, used to build only in stone. And this stone, sandstone, is available in the region. So we built this house in sandstone with sandstone screens and a lot of outdoor sheltered spaces. So again, this house is a house where you can walk in even when it's 40 degrees outside, and this is a desert. The entire location is inside a desert, and the house is cool naturally. That's an office building that we did based on a similar principle where there is a courtyard to create passive cooling, and there are louvers in the building that are oriented towards the north, so you get indirect sunlight into each part, and at the same time, there's reduced heat gain. This is a house which is built with a complete envelope all around it, which creates these sheltered spaces for every room to look out into. This again is in Rajasthan, in desert climate, with a huge amount of heat reduction in all the rooms within this house. And that's the last project. It's a community center that we just built for the village children of 144 villages in this region. You can see the location, it's complete desert all around. So the building is only 9,000 square feet, but it demonstrates how 9,000 square feet can actually give you 5 times the area, 45,000 square feet of usable space, because the entire garden you can walk up to, and it becomes a rooftop garden. In the center, there is an open auditorium space for community activities. And this building, again, is built in local sandstone with local labor. And in fact, we revived the traditional crafts to create this building, giving employment to a lot of people who did not have work. These are the internal spaces. So stone screens reduce the heat gain into the building. So it's a library for children and a community center for the villagers. So these are just contextual responses of different kinds in different locations, but primarily focusing on how you, by design itself, reduce the heat gain, make the building far more energy efficient, and in doing so, reduce the carbon footprint as you go along. Some steps to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Νομίζω με
Thank you very much. I think with the last slides, we have seen that solutions exist, and this is what we want to achieve. We want to have inspiration so as to safeguard the environment and preserve historical memory. So we proceed to the next panel.
Θα συνεχίσουμε τη συζήτηση.
We shall continue the discussion with the second panel, where we talk about the Greek reality. And I will kindly invite to the Dr. Amalia Androulidaki, architect and General Director of the Restoration Museums and Technical Works and Minister of Culture, Emmanuel Votsis from COM37 Architects, who had the pleasure to make the imprint of the Gyaros building, Mr. Pantelis Levadis, founder and managing director of Ecoveritas, an important green architecture office and member of the BOD of Sustainable Building Council Greece. The panel shall be moderated by Dr. Stella Kivelou, architect and engineer, professor in spatial planning and sustainable development at the Pantheon University, MSP and blue economy expert. Good afternoon. My name is Stella Kivelou. I'm a professor in spatial planning and sustainable development in Pantheon University, an architect engineer. And I also work for the blue economy and the blue urban economy as a point of reference in the Eastern Mediterranean in the support mechanism of the European Commission related to these topics. Our panelists will have to wait a bit before I give them the floor, as there is a kind demand to start with 3 speakers, Mr. Nikos Sifounakis, former minister, Mr. Vangelis Gougis, who is president of the Association of Imprisoned and Exiles, and Mr. Nikos Manios, General Secretary of SFEA. So I kindly invite to the podium Mr. Sifounakis for a brief intervention. Has already worked about Gyaros. He undertook an initiative when he was alternate minister at the Ministry of Environment, formerly PECA, and Giorgos Papandreou, Prime Minister. And so, Mr. Sifounakis, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. When I was at the Ministry of the Aegean, 2000, up to 2004, I worked for Gyaros. First of all, good afternoon. I was informed from the internet about this event, and I expressed my willingness to participate and be here tonight. Representing the Greek society in 2000, we initiated an important effort to establish rules with special ministerial decrees about the urban planning for every Aegean Sea. The position of the state, as far as Gyaros is concerned, is that Gyaros is an unbuilt island. It is a unique landscape. What we saw from Alumil is very interesting, which was about Thessaloniki or New York, the building of Google is another thing, but Gyaros and Makronissos are holy places for Greeks and are unbuilt islands like Delos. We cannot build. It should be protected, and it remains as such because it's an archaeological site. So Gyaros, right from the Roman period, was an uninhabited island. It was the Romans that first sent exiles there. And it is a virgin island, and it is a Natura area. So it cannot be built. So the study that shall take place should rely on that. So I heard what Mr. Martino said, and the person that I truly and genuinely trust, because he's a true benefactor for many things. So it's going to be an architecture of ideas to promote the dramatic history of Gyaros. Buildings will be restored and will be saved per the studies of the Ministry of the Aegean, and he made a reference to myself. So the aim of the competition is to awaken the Greek state for the preservance and the preservation of this island. So in 2000, Prime Minister Simitis established his Ministry of the Aegean. July 24, 2001, when we celebrate the fall of junta, Prime Minister Simitis, with 60 exiles who lived in Gyaros, and myself as minister, we visited the island. And of course, with the Demos of Hermopolis, Yannis Dekavalas, and the minister of the mayor of Anosiros, that Gyaros belongs to. And of course, today it is a unique municipality. Now it's a single municipality, and it belongs to Syros, Gyaros. Now, in September 19, 2019, with a ministerial decree 72, we characterize the prisons and all the buildings, and of course the limitations in building in this, on this island. On October 18, 2001, with a new presidential decree, we had a new committee that was established for the evaluating the people who suffered there. The members of the committee were the following: President Michalis Zardanis, General President of Exiles, 1967-1974. Katsibinis Kostas, lawyer, son of an exile, president of Association of Gyaros Historical Site. Members: Vasilis Kalamatianos, members of the General Committee of Communist Party. Iakovos Kambanelis, this major figure, the member of the Academy of Athens on behalf of PASOK. Karathanos Dimitris, lawyer, On behalf also of the Communist Party, Macheras Evangelos, honoris causa presidents of Bar of Athens exile in Gyaros, Takis Benas, another biblical personality of the left, journalist also exiled in Gyaros, Papadimitriou Thodoros, the sculptor, professor of the School of Fine Arts, Stavros Paravas, one of the last imprisoned of Gyaros, Yannis Engas, architect, and Anna Solomou. We have her son today with us, professor of music in Paris. As a child was together, and of course her mother was a member of this committee. Moreover, studies in 2002 were connected to an open competition, and the Tuva Kuba Retanesi office approves the build of a small hub, let's say, for boats to arrive, with a budget for 163,000 euros. Secondly, with a law 716, there was a new decision to promote the main building and the adjacent buildings and the transformation of these, of some of buildings as a museum. This was signed in 2002, on October 2. End of 2003, the draft study was finalized, and it was supposed to be delivered at the end of 2004 of the final study. The approvals were driven by the ministry and by scope of Ministry of the Aegean. Vokos and Petrakopoulos architectural offices were paid for the draft study, and the expenditure was 350,000, and the budget was initially 3,160,000. That afterwards, when the committee and the Prime Minister, with whom we had a meeting, and he made some declarations that I shall substitute with 6 million euros the project, the final budget would be around 13 million. And the third study was the creation of a network of walking routes, because it was presented as such by the late professor of the Polytechnic School that was responsible for the research with the students. And under the supervision of Theodoros Papadimitriou, professor of the Athens School of Fine Arts. Comments of microphone. You're right, Vangelis, says the former minister. So we identify comments of microphone. I apologize that there is a fight between the speakers we cannot interpret. I don't want to say things that are acceptable by everyone. That's why I insist on what Martinos said. The opinion of the Greek state is the one I reiterate. So those who shall participate in the competition, the General Secretary of AEGEAS has the studies. These studies should be delivered to researchers. The 23 years have passed since those studies. You saw the buildings. The buildings will be in ruins. So you have the data, you have the information, so I believe that your committee should utilize What I want to underline, and I'm not representing my political party, but I'm talking to architects, to historians, the memory of these people, the president and the secretary of the Association of Exiles and Prisoned. They were in Gyaros, these people, as exiles, so we need to respect not their own sacrifice. 18,500 people stayed in Gyaros. We have all the names from the Vlichia study. Vlichia, in her study, as we have the two parts of the island, from the second to the third cove, there are rocks, and on the rocks we would actually write the number of the 18,500 people who suffered in Gyaros. It is an amazing study. I'm here at your disposal under this rationale. So how can you overcome this thing? So we can do whatever we want on the islands. Unfortunately, a catastrophe has taken place on these islands. But these two islands, Gyaros and Makronissos, are holy islands, islands where no new building can be erected. So in Gyaros there are huge ruts, and they describe even these people who were exiled about these huge ruts. That's what I want to say, and once again, thank you for your attention. And of course, I'm here at your disposal. I'm not here to make a critique, but I want to be useful. So I believe that all architects, and of course, my dear friend of the association, Mr. Loudias, and my collaborator when I was in IPECA, and all of you who shall participate, can be just this one. So we need to save the buildings. The study should be applicable, the one for the historical routes up to the cemetery. Implement the study. That's all. Thank you.
We thank very warmly Mr. Sifounakis. And let me call to the floor, to the podium, Mr. Evangelos Poukis, President of the Association of Prisoners and Exiles, ex-prisoners and exiles. Thank you very much for the opportunity you give me to say a few words on this competition. We have come uninvited on behalf of the association of those who were imprisoned during 1967-74, and we are among the few ex-prisoners alive, those who were imprisoned during the dictatorship. We were sent there during the Holy Week of 1967. You have seen how the island is. It is a death island with dozens of people dead during the Civil War. People who built this building that you saw there, as well as the clinic that existed. When Patakos came 1 month after the dictatorship in Gyaros, he told us two things. Make a declaration and submit to the regime, because otherwise you will stay here and you will be corpses. Corpses that will rot here if you do not declare your allegiance to the regime. Yet we stayed there despite his recommendations, the recommendations of this fascist, under the guidance of CIA, who did this great, brought this plight to our country. We have gone through very difficult days. We were living in tents because the building could not accommodate us all. The younger ones, we went higher up, and we lived there together with the rats, with scorpions, and other insects and animals you cannot imagine. There were no cure, no treatment for the bites of the scorpions. It was dramatic. What we suffered there, I don't want to tire you out. I stayed there from 1967. Then we were sent to Leros, and then the younger ones were sent back to Gyaros in 1968. I have with me here in the delegation the youngest prisoner. He was there with his mother. Mikis Solomos is now an adult, and our secretary, Nikos Manios, and Thanasis Gremnias. We were the last prisoners in December. They were the last prisoners in December 1973 until the 24th of July 1974. We are against any effort to so-called develop or enhance this island. Why? Because we cannot accept and we cannot know how this effort will end. I read that the municipality of Syros has already signed for the enhancement of the island. I don't know what they mean. We should leave these areas of historical memory to remain as they are. Let's leave the seals, the monk seals live. We are in favor of restoring these buildings and the historical memory relics, but no investment enhancement by private companies or any other who want to act as entrepreneurs and who will do anything against the historical respect of this island. There are dozens of other islands. Let private capital go there to invest, to build whatever they want. I will just read out the last paragraph. Allow me 1 minute. Comment off the microphone. The interpreters cannot hear, unfortunately. So, I can inform you, as the Association of Ex-Prisoners and Exiles, and respecting those who died there, we will stay vigilant and we will take care of anything that will happen. We are against anything that is for the enhancement, touristic enhancement of the island. If you wish to enhance anything touristically, please go to other islands. In concluding, I want to read out the following. Our values, principles, and social vision of all those who are still living and who suffered in Gyaros incorporate the respect for nature, and we do not want and we will not allow a landmark of freedom to become an area of profiteering. And the lifting of the island makes us very suspicious as to what will happen. We all agree that it should be visited for the historical memory and not a destination for tourists. There are other islands to go. We will be vigilant and we will watch your steps. We came here uninvited, but we are still alive, some dozens of us, and we will struggle, we will strive to preserve this historical memory. Let me read out something. If you want to be someone, dare to do something that is worthy in order for you to be sent to Gyaros and to imprisonment. Thank you. We thank Mr. Boukis, and I would like to ask Mr. Magnos to come to the floor. He is the Secretary General of the Association of Ex-Prisoners. Good afternoon, everyone. I will not tire you out. Just two things. I had the great luck when I was going to the elementary school here in Athens to have a teacher who was a real teacher and who insisted in teaching us Greek history. And he would not miss a day that he wouldn't give us an example from Kolokotronis, Papaflessas, the good and the bad. I have lived what I have experienced because I wanted to live this way, and I came up with a conclusion. Many scientists disagree with me that history is the best teacher for tomorrow. The memory and knowledge of the past will protect from the mistakes of tomorrow. And I don't mean for every individual separately. I mean the society and humanity. If this land and all other lands that exist need something, it is to remember this. It is not just the Acropolis, which is a listed monument. Acropolis teaches us the civilization of ancient Greeks. The same for Makronissos, the same for Gyaros and other islands that have been forgotten. The exile land requires respect because it is through the maintenance, the preservation of memory, knowledge comes, and knowledge can guide us in the right path, as individuals, as humans, as Greeks. This is the important thing, and this is why it is worth preserving the monuments. It is not just to go there and cry or bless our youth when we were heroes. No, far away from us. This is what we should embrace. This is what we should understand. It is not by chance that Makronissos is abandoned, Gyaros is abandoned, and the buildings are falling apart. It is not by chance. These are political choices. I'm not saying that the organizers have such a view, but we need to take into account that the land will remain, must remain, as a land of historical memory. Thank you. Thank you. We thank Mr. Magnos, and now we come back to our panel. We have become richer. I truly believe that. Now, our panel is composed by Mrs. Amalia Androulidaki, who is an architect and Director General at the Ministry of Culture. Mr. Manos Votsis, architect engineer. You will talk about your, I can't see the name of your firm. Mr. Pantelis Levantis, who is the founder of Ecoveritas. Okay, so Mrs. Androulidaki, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for their invitation. The Ministry of Culture has taken this effort under its auspices. The fact that we are all discussing, all of us, institutional agencies, privates, the Association of Ex-Prisoners, we have been discussing something, but not for very long. The Ministry of Culture embarked upon the protection in 2001. In 2001, it was characterized as a historical land. The area and the buildings they were characterized as historical listed buildings. This happened in December 2001. A few months before, we had the decision by the Minister for the Aegean, as Mr. Thessaloniki said, where the buildings were characterized as listed, the buildings for the prison and all the buildings in the area in the 5 coves of the island. In 2011, we had the limitation of the historical area. Before that, it was just the 5 coves. It's not the whole island. What you see, and it is in the National Cadastre, what you see in green is the part of the island that has been characterized as a historical site and includes the 5 coves. Then we see here the Government Gazette excerpt. Apologies, I cannot read from that far, but it is very important since I can. It is very important that we have the building of the prison and all the buildings and the constructions that are in these areas, because they are, as a whole, a site of memory, symbols of freedom, and exhibits of an era that played a major role in modern Greece. They preserve, without any alterations, their initial structure and character, and provide valuable information for the conditions of living during their operation. These are buildings with a very sober architecture, where the materials and the construction have a consistency. I read this out because I want to stress that all these elements describe in great detail and accuracy what are the elements that are protected and which should never, no matter what intervention is done, cannot alter them. So the presence of the Ministry of Culture and the aegis of the ministry means that the proposals will be in the context of this protection of historical memory. At the same time, the Ministry of the Aegean, wanting to transform Gyaros to an area to be visited for the historical memory, has delegated the research program, what Mr. Thessaloniki mentioned, creation of a network of paths in the area of the island of Gyaros, the memory routes under the scientific responsibility of Annie Vrichea. The main objectives of this research program, you see here very few elements from this study, which exists, of course. It is a research program. It is not a study exactly. It is a program or project. The studies would be the result of this research project. So the main objective was to put forward, to promote all the periods of operation of the camps, the activation of memory through the enhancement of the memories of the people who lived there, interventions of human scale and mild form that would not be imposed in the natural landscape and will not cancel the memory. We see here the proposals. It is something between a master plan and a preliminary study. We did not reach the final study, and this is maybe this was the reason that nothing from this program was implemented, despite the fact that the approval was given. The Ministry of the Aegean, which was responsible at the time, I do not know why they did not proceed with implementation. And the ministry that succeeded it, I think it's the Ministry for Shipping and Insular Policy, did not do it either. Comment off the microphone. Well, you didn't say so before. Anyway, I have to say that nothing was done at the time. Nothing was done, unfortunately. We see here one of the maps showing the routes by land and by sea, and very many other elements. The signs, we see some sketches, some drawings. I do not know whether you can see them. Some of the excellent drawings done by the students and Mrs. Vricher as well, regarding the walls that must be restored, not in order for them to be used, but in order to put the signs on them. During the same period, there is also an interest for placing wind generators, wind turbines. They were never, not even examined their positioning, the wind farm. There were some funds, but this never went through, this wind farm with the turbines. But there was some correspondence, and a license was asked and was given by the Ministry of Culture for the demining. You heard that it was used by the Navy, the Hellenic Navy. The demining was done recently only for the WWF routes. The remaining of the island still has a problem in this respect. In 2011, the island and the surrounding sea was included in the Natura 2000 network, with whatever that means, not much, I'm afraid, with a special regulation by the Port Authority of Syros. The fishing was prohibited, and this is the most important, and protects it. In 2015, it was established as permanent shelter refuge for wildlife in an area of 245 square kilometers. And in 2019, the European program Cyclades Life was completed, in the context of which we have the co-management committee of Gyaros, together with WWF and MOM, the Society for the Protection and Study of Monk Seals, and other agencies. And of course, the Ministry of Culture participates through the Department for Contemporary Monuments. To access the island, only in 2018, we see the quay here. It was approved to place signs. In 2018, we had the approval for the improvement and restoration of the quay on the island of Gyaros. And the most recent action in 2023 is the approval of placing information signs by the WWF in the context of sub-project 1. These were signs with information about the environment, but also historical data. And this is when the demining took place for one of the routes that was constructed by WWF. It was done by the military. It has to be done for the rest of the island. Here you see some pictures in order to tell you that in March 2024, in an event in the context of the new European Bauhaus, where I am the focal point, the national focal point. This was an event organized in Thessaloniki, and there Mr. Liroudias announced that the preparation has been completed for the new international architectural ideas competition, Arxellence 3, aiming at safeguarding historical memory and putting forward the particular features of the island Gyaros. The word enhancement, apart from the wind farm, has never been used by anyone else, but the term is used here. So this new international interdisciplinary competition of architectural ideas is aligned with the directives of the European Green Deal, the Sustainable Blue Economy, the strategy on biodiversity of the European Union, as analyzed by Mr. Pavlopoulos, and with the other objectives of sustainable development. It is in accordance with the principles of the European Bauhaus, which were adopted by Alumil Group already in 2020. They adjusted what they do, saying that they adopt these principles, and they did so in Arxellence too. So the international architectural community will be asked to submit their proposals for the creation of a particular hub, as it is called, which will include an interactive center, a biodiversity lab, a research institute, and proposals will be asked, and this is where the misunderstanding lies, a business model of sustainability, although I understand that it pertains to the sustainability of the research center and not something business-like where someone will have a profit. And it will be able to be funded with green funds, and the new competition aims at selecting the ideas, aiming at creating a live laboratory for the development of strategies for biodiversity and innovative approaches in Eastern Mediterranean. It is important, I think it could be done, and at the same time we could have we could use the studies already done in order to promote historical memory, having always in mind that a historical monument and listed monument, which is not mainly the architecture that is preserved, but its historical memory, requires different approaches. Thank you very much for your attention.
We wish to thank Dr. Androulidaki. I believe she set the actual framework. So allow me now to continue with Mr. Manos Votsis. Good afternoon. Honestly, there are so many people in such an event. I'm not used to have so many people in front of me, but still I have many things to say. And I try to limit those things in the things that were already discussed today. So I'm a member of the office COM 37 Architects. And in autumn, for the MEASEPE office that was co-working with the project that Mrs. Thessaloniki referred to, we had to do the mapping of the Gyaros prison complex in the context of the consolidation enhancement study. As Ms. Androulidaki said, that 2 years earlier, in 2001 and 2002, there were consecutive decisions in just a few months that characterized as buildings to be preserved and all the installations and buildings adjacent to the 5 coves of Gyaros Island, and afterwards a historical site and moments of preservance and all the military camps. And also, of course, there was the 2011 decision that once again limits the, not limits, the whole island historical, I don't know, the last one has the limitation. Now, in the framework of the study, of the main building, the adjacent buildings, we had, of course, to do a mapping of the prison complex via a preliminary study adopted by the site of new monuments. They used we had discussed about the creation of some adjacent buildings, a museum, and some other issues. Now, from the architecture study by the study of Ms. Michea, there was a preliminary study for some historical routes. I don't know what happened with the studies and never visited Gyaros again, but I will say about our own experience of the mapping of the Gyaros prison complex, and I'll make a brief analysis of their pathologies and, of course, the building itself. So we've already mentioned quite some times about the historicity of the site since the Roman times, that it is a place of exiles of political opponents. In 1922, after the Greek-Turkish War, we saw that 150 soldiers were sent there. Germans in 1943 also used for prisoners. And then we arrived in 1947 during the Civil War, where it was proposed to use once again as a military camp for members of EAM and of the Liberating Army of Greece. So since 1947, we've seen Gyaros, political prisoners, and already there were 14,500 prisoners. So in 5 different coves in the western part of the island, and of course in different tents. In 1947, we had the first buildings for routes, for buildings, the prisons, the hospital, the villas of the directors, and the coves, everything. All the other buildings were built by the prisoners. Now, the prison itself was finalized in 1952 with workers from Syros. From August 1955, all prisoners were in the prison building. The prison was reopened in 1967 during the dictatorship of the military junta, along with a military camp with 6,000 prisoners. In November 1967, due to the international pressures, they were the prisoners were transferred to Leros. It was used from November 1973 back until July 1974 for the last time. The architecture schematics create some important photorealistic images, but what happens when the building already exists and it needs to be mapped? As it is a historical building, but it is a prison at the same time that is in ruin and on another that is inaccessible. I will refer to our own experience where we did the initial mapping. The field work and, of course, the documents were submitted in 2003 when we finalized the project. The time schedule, which was very pressing, the actual topic itself, the difficulty of accessibility and adverse weather conditions were important issues that we had to face. In order to arrive on the island of Gyaros, we had to use Perla, the boat of Nikos Perlas, of Yacht Marne, who helped us a lot. We started from Kini, in the western part of Syros. The weather was bad. It took around 15 days to arrive there. In 4 days we could not arrive. We were disappointed, especially after many efforts of many hours with many different maneuvers in order to avoid the hard sea. We had to return. We apologize, but the speaker speaks very, very rapidly. Please ask from the speaker not to speak that rapidly. We cannot interpret because he's speed reading. Upon our arrival on the island, we could not work because we're all wet. And of course, engineers had difficulty in working and operating. We organized a small office where we used the furniture that we found on site. Unfortunately, there were a lot of dangers. There were difficulty of accessibility on the roads, on the roofs. Also, we need to say that there were some sheep that created problems of hygiene. Also at the hospital there were dead animals, and when we saw the so-called black snake of Gyaros was not the greatest dangers we had. During the field operations, these are the people who participate: Philippos Gerodakis, Adonis Krasakis, Dimitra Bougha, Ηράκλειτος Αντωνιάδης, Βάλια Ανδρέου, Λίδα Τζάμου, Dina Daouli, and Kiki Grezia, Anita Karamanea, and Marila Fotiadi. On the field were also Apostolos Drakos, Nathanastasia Nikos Vitis. I wish to make a special reference about the chronicle of the imprint and about the use of the buildings during the period after 1967. It was Maria Pinkali, doctor, who used to be prisoner on the island after 1967, and in 1989 she established in Greek the Greek Center of supporting victims of exiles and prisoners, and also another medical doctor who was in Gyaros after 1967. Gyaros is between Kea, Kythnos, Dia, and Syros. It is a rock island where the boats transit and try to avoid all other problems. Now, there are fortunately many natural coves, and sometimes you cannot see the actual prison building. The buildings are between the 4th and 5th cove of the island, as you can actually see on the screen. We can also see the adjacent buildings, which is on the bay on cove number 4. Now, this is an image of the prison building, which was on the west-east direction. There are two main buildings, two main stages, and of course the actual dimension is 70 to multiplied by 136 meters. In total, there were 5 levels. The main part of the building is the main corridor that you can see in yellow that divides into 2 important parts. The 6 axes for the prisoners. On the blue part, you can actually see where the guardians used to live. Also, there was the kitchen, and of course some other adjacent buildings. In the level C, it is also the so-called hospital and some other parts where prisoners were kept. In area number 3, there was a kitchen. Finally, on level 6, which is the biggest one, there were 7 places where prisoners were located. Now, the operational organization, some images, there are some different halls, different rooms, and that's the hygiene areas, it is what it was called. On the western part, it is an open space. For the creation of the 5 levels, there was a structural analysis that was made, and we saw that were places built with stones, used actually the materials from the island. Then we have the main building using, of course, cement and use reinforced concrete. Now, to produce concrete, they use seawater, and this is the reason why there are many parts that are in ruins, especially in parts of the roof. There was a mixed structure from concrete and also bricks. From what we managed to identify, we managed to show that we use also marble from the island of Tinos. At certain parts on the main part of the building, there are some glasses, and there are also other parts of the building. So there are some parts that are in ruins, but of course there is also erosion, which can be seen on some parts of the north part of the building. Now, in relationship with the working conditions and the size of the building, we see that there are some other problems in the structure of the building. Now, the 4th cove, you can see in the northern part was a hospital, which is a rectangular building, 66 multiplied by 12, and the southern part of it, we can see the access. And you can see how this happens via a corridor. There were also hospitals, beds for people who used to be hospitalized, and areas of hygiene. The building on the western part of the cove is the smallest of the adjacent, and it was used for electricity generator. You can see also some other part of the document, which also of the building, which is called the hospital. One of the most interesting parts that we identified there and needs to be preserved are the different equipment of the building. You can see, for example, some marble parts, some electricity devices and machines, and some other furniture made out of wood. But most of these buildings were, of course, manufactured by prisoners, prisoners on constructions. Now, for these constructions, they used, of course, the material found on the island. In different parts, especially on the management office, you can actually find the different scriptures made by the prisoners. They used to write the names on the bricks. The same perspectives were also done by the guardians. So the people who were over there had their own limitations. It was for them another type of exile. So guardians also used to be there. You can actually see the main corridor where guardians could enter. And of course, this led to a second hall next to the small hospital. Then via another way, you could access other parts of the building. We also had people who could actually work on the different areas. So based on these images, there were some small doors that could enter to some other parts of the building on the upper part. So via these small parts, we could see people who lived there, especially the prisoners. So there was a metal ladder where you could have access. Please, you try to wrap up your presentation. We're out of time. Our arrival on the islands was a surprise. There was also another building that was hidden. We were shocked. During the 10 days that our work on the field took place, we used to understand what was happening there, but we could not see the barbaric use of these buildings. During that period, my thoughts was to leave the building as such, in its full destruction, let's say. All of the above could actually, let's say, change this unfortunate event. But as engineers, we had to change things. And we want to create this, let's say, historical route. And over there, we could have a new place where people could actually see things and help people understand what was happening there. So as we understand, the restoration of the building would take a lot of money, a lot of time, and probably technically was more viable to use resources and especially try to restore adjacent buildings. After all the photos I've collected, we see that there are many buildings that are in ruins right now. I wish to thank Mr. Evangelos Leloudias and Nona Rally for the kind of invitation in my presence tonight. Good luck to all of you to preserve the historical heritage and preserve the historical memory. Thank you. I wish to thank Mr. Votsis for this so analytical presentation, his experience on this work. Now let's move forward rapidly to Mr. Levadis, please. Good afternoon. First of all, I wish to thank Alumil Company and AEGEAS non-for-profit organization for the honor to be able to participate in tonight's event. And last but not least, I must also thank Mr. Evangelos Leloudias. So allow me to say a few words about us. We are not such a big and known company, Ecoveritas. Our company is active for 13 years. as a sustainability consultant for the assessment and certification of the sustainability of buildings, applying the international British certification, which is called BREEAM. We maintain close relationship with a BRE certification body and we're founding members of the BRE Academy. To date, we have certified buildings with a total area of 430,000 square meters, and another 75,000 square meters are in progress. We are founding members of the Sustainable Building Council of Greece, SBC Greece, and in 2013, we were awarded with the BREEAM Country First Award for the first BREEAM certification in 2013. Now, let me get to the heart of sustainability. What I will try to do, I will try to explain what is the international framework for sustainability of structured environment and building. The first key feature of the sustainability framework that is for the structured building is diversity. So in accordance with the practice of international sustainability certification schemes, such as BREEAM, constructions are evaluated in 10 different categories. These are management. Apologize, I have changed the slide, says the speaker. So these are management, health and wellness, energy, transport, water, materials, waste, use of land and ecology, pollution, and innovation. Each category has different weights for each, according to its environmental, social, and economic data. Here you can see, for example, that in Greece, these are the weights for Greece, the weight of energy is just 13%, so low. And the category with the greatest weight is that of health and wellness of the residents with 15%. This actually reflects today the global trend of sustainability focusing on an anthropocentric design of the built environment. The second key feature of the sustainable framework for the built environment is the holistic approach. Given the fact that diversity, which was mentioned earlier, we need holistic strategies that shall include all categories and take into account the interaction between these categories. A typical example is the amount of introduction of fresh air and alternations inside a building. As these increase, in other words, the quantity of air, the indoor quality is upgraded, but inevitably the energy consumed is increased. So a sustainable solution cannot be characterized by maximalisms. It should be characterized by a balance which is achieved by the appropriate combination and optimization of the design, specifications, practices, and management of buildings during their operation. And we should not forget that this balance must be maintained throughout the life cycle of a building. In other words, from its construction until its destruction, if is this the case. So this is the quintessence of sustainability. Now, the biggest challenge we face right now is climate change. We heard it also from the former President of the Hellenic Republic, Mr. Prokopis Pavlopoulos. The consequences are enormous for all humanity, and among other things, it affects the way buildings are built, are designed, and are operated in this built environment. Especially in Greece, the intensity of phenomena such as floods, droughts, and fires will increase. So over here, adaptation and resilience are important. The focus on the anthropocentric design, construction, operation of buildings is today a very strong trend with a clear aim of improving the health and wellness of the residents within the buildings. Typical examples are the work of the Global Green Building Council, Better Places for People, as well as the Well Evaluation Certification System developed by the International Well Buildings Institute. Well, of course, in today's challenges, we cannot neglect technology, internet, and AI. Practices such as 3D printing, BIM, smart buildings, artificial intelligence promise a lot, and the applications have already begun in Greece. In Greece, the myth that sustainability in the built environment is more expensive is still maintained, and generally in its application. Obviously, this is not the case. There are 8 factors that determine costs, and when we know them and apply appropriate practices, any additional costs can be minimized, but also can be offset with capital gain. So first, when we say more expensive, the question is more expensive than what? Each engineer, each company has a different reference building and different quality standards. Second, the timing of the implementation of sustainability plays a key role. Ideally, the sustainability strategy should be defined in the brief given to the architect so as to minimize any burdensome costs. Third, the expertise of sustainability consultants is also important due to the multidimensional nature of sustainability, as we said earlier. Fourth, the degree and extent of sustainable characteristics also determine costs. Higher scores and rankings in international certifications may increase some costs, but as was mentioned earlier, they offer added value. Fifth, we should not forget the land, the plot of land. So also the landscape. The land where any plot or any building exists. So its location, the characteristics of land make up about 25% of the sustainability rating. This is something to not forget. So not just about buildings. Sixth, the maturity of the Greek market and the legislation are also cost determinants. In Greece, the last 5 years, there have been great leaps in the market. We have applications in design in BIM environment. We have EPD versions like Alumil that has for all its products the so-called environmental profile certification, international certifications in the materials industry. Furthermore, sustainability principles and practices have been introduced. This is true into the legislation, such as recently NOC, although with some problems in specific articles concerning the constitutional validity, as we see lately. Seventh, the quality of national infrastructure also determines costs. And what I mean by that, the network current in Greece is still considered dirty because a large percentage is produced by burning fossil fuels such as natural gas and oil, while the production from renewable energy sources is smaller in terms of contribution in the Greek energy grid. Finally, the most important factor facing all challenges in the issue of sustainability is the heart, vision, and ingenuity of the people who run agencies and companies. In the photo below, on the right, you can see Ulysses. I'm not just suggesting that the road to sustainability is an odyssey, but that the way to implement sustainability requires, among other things, the qualities of resourcefulness and ingenuity. As I personally understand the Arxellence 3 competition, and as it is actually presented itself, the requested genesis of an idea is a very big challenge for 3 reasons. Gyaros is a unique habitat with rare biodiversity, so the strict implementation of a genuine, sustainable development, the way it was presented previously, is a one-way street. So we need a strict implementation of a genuine sustainability strategy. Secondly, the creation of an autonomous center in energy and especially water. And as I come from the Cyclades complex, and I do know, is a complex technological task, but mainly satisfies a constant need, especially in the complex of the Cyclades Islands. And finally, something which is very important, in the extremely important social dimension, the birth of an idea is called upon to highlight, preserve, and honor the historical memory of the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levantis. Excellent thoughts and ideas regarding sustainable building. Allow me now to restrict myself to just one slide and a few words. I had prepared something, a rather larger presentation, but there is no time, so I will not abuse of your time to present. But as an architect and urban planner and working in sea urban planning, I wanted to tell you a few things. Here in the panel we are different, and I think that it is very good that each one shared their views. So I would say that this competition matches an increasing trend and a discussion around the following. Introduction and inclusion of cultural values and socio-cultural values in urban planning, especially in sea urban planning, which on the islands is about to be implemented. So far, Italy, Greece and Croatia, out of the European countries, the EU member states, do not have such sea urban plans or spatial planning. All the others do have. But in these, the missing layer in these plans, the missing layer is the values of cultural heritage. Or if it exists, it does so with various weaknesses, let's say. There is a book in the European Platform of Sea Spatial Planning that a French colleague and myself wrote regarding the inclusion of these cultural values. And we did some good work there on including the cultural values. You have seen what François Mitterrand was saying, as the former president of the Republic told us. Greece, especially the Aegean, is the birthplace of the West. Gyaros is the first sanctuary in the world. I don't remember the name of the professor, the Cambridge professor who did the excavations there. They have come up with a conclusion that it was the first sanctuary in the world. It was in the Aegean. So this is the birthplace of the West. So if we start from there, the cultural element which can be negative. We have Keynote with the Holocaust. I do not compare them, but you understand what I'm saying. There are cultural elements, positive or negative, and these memories, this identity must be preserved. And these must be included in the plans, either land or sea or interaction of the two. Therefore, since we want to have conclusions from this competition that will allow us to see what is the framework for the islands at large. Mr. Salpingidis said it before. So I think this is an element that we must keep. Another point that I want to mention, and it's seen on the slide, is that Gyaros is a live socio-economic system, or socio-ecological system, rather. Based on this idea, we have to think about how we perceive conservation. We don't perceive nature for nature itself. We understand nature for humans. We see the various systems, cities, land, regions, etc., as socio-ecological systems. And complex adaptive systems. These are systems that are organized and self-organized. And the behavior of the various parts of them does not lead us to a conclusion as regards their final expression. So the cities, the regions, the human organization, the human body are complex adaptive systems. So there is a plan, there is a socio-ecological planning, which, especially in the islands, should be put in place. This is under the general umbrella of biodiversity. We talked about biodiversity. Under this umbrella, we have this socio-ecological planning. So it is a live system. You can see it, because the previous session has to be linked to this one. The previous ones talked about the environment. The Prime Minister has announced various commitments and measures. In Ocean 2024, he announced the abolishment of the boats using a motor, full prohibition until 2026. So we are ahead of major changes. And some of these changes that happen either thanks to the European Green Deal, either thanks to REPowerEU or whatever, we are talking about evolutionary governance, and we have to see things in an evolutionary way. We cannot stay and say this will remain as it is. We have to see them evolutionary with respect. So I propose an evolutionary ecological planning with an evolutionary dimension. Simin Davundi's evolutionary governance is very important here. She is a professor in the UK who has worked a lot on this. So we need to produce ideas for the competition, some directives that will have to do with this type of planning. That's all from me. Thank you. Well, thank you all very much. Well, we are stepping down.